1290 WAKR. Time to go to film school. I'm giving you a hand here. My good friend Joe Fortunato has dug up a gem today. We're going to film school. Film study professor Joe Fortunato. Joe, why don't you take it from there, my friend? Good morning, Joe. Thanks for joining us again.
Well, good morning, Ray. Good morning, everybody. And this one's a big one, at least in my world this week. We are looking at The Empire Strikes Back from 1980, officially now called Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. This was released in the U.S., a wide release, because it had a couple of premieres prior, but it wide release May 21st, 1980. I'm sorry, that was a limited release. Then it went wide June 18th, 1980. This was directed by Irvin Kershner, the first Star Wars movie not directed by George Lucas. Writers included Lee Brackett, Clarence Kasdan, and of course, George Lucas himself, and the cast of Star Wars, who I'm sure most of you all know. Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, Billy D. Williams joins the fray this time. Alec Guinness returns, and all the supporting characters. This had 4 Oscar nominations and 2 Oscar wins, one for Best Sound and one a Special Achievement Oscar in Visual Effects. And notably, I said, one for Best Sound. This is actually the first movie to have a 5.1 surround sound mix. And if you're a cinephile like me, sound is important. So, we can kind of thank The Empire Strikes Back for bringing us 5.1. And now, of course, we have all kinds of different sound mixes in our home theaters. There are no opening credits. This is just an opening crawl, as most people understand Star Wars to be. You start with the opening crawl. There's no opening credits. But what a lot of people don't know is that's actually, I don't know if illegal's the word, but it's against the rules of the unions. So this was to preserve the dramatic opening Star Wars movies. George Lucas insisted on having all the credits at the end of the movie. But the Writers Guild, the Directors Guild, they kind of allowed this for Star Wars, the original, because it wasn't really expected to be much. But they kind of put their foot down on The Empire Strikes Back, and they tried to pull the movie from release. They were unsuccessful at that, obviously. But they did fine George Lucas heavily because he put the credits in the back. And they even tried to fine director Irvin Kershner. And Lucas paid all the fines himself, nearly $250,000. He bitterly dropped his membership of the Writers Guild, Directors Guild, the MPAA. And this is, kind of affected his entire career. The movie itself, the principal photography lasted over 180 days. It was the longest shoot of any Star Wars movie. There was a total of 64 sets constructed for this film. It was a huge successful financial hit. It recovered its $30 million budget within 3 months of the release. At the time of its release, it was the 3rd highest grossing film worldwide after the original Star Wars and Jaws. Of course, I always got to get a Jaws mention in there. It was the first sequel in history to gross over $100 million. And it was essentially, now all of that big budget, big special effects, much anticipation. This is another sort of ironic thing about this movie. It's essentially an indie movie, an independent film. Because in order to avoid sharing the creative rights, George Lucas decided to avoid using a major studio to finance the movie, which is typically what's done, especially in a big movie like this. Instead, he bankrolled the entire $30 million production himself, using some profits from Star Wars and a bank loan. And it was, very risky, but it paid off several times over because he recovered his investment within 3 months, as I just mentioned. And then, it basically set up his empire of Lucasfilm. And to show his gratitude beyond the Hollywood norm, he shared his profits with his employees, giving nearly $5 million in bonuses. So all's well that ends well on that front. Couple of fun production notes. Mark Hamill, a lot of people will remember the scene where he meets Yoda and he's in Yoda's little hut, and it's small because Yoda's diminutive, and Mark Hamill bangs his head on the ceiling. It's a funny scene. Well, he actually had to bang his head 16 times on the ceiling before Irvin Kershner was satisfied with the scene. Some other sort of interesting production facts. When they were shooting in Norway for the snow stuff on Hoth, a very fierce snowstorm hit the hotel where the cast and crew were staying. Now, this normally would have halted filming, but director Irvin Kershner thought that, hey, these weather conditions are excellent opportunity just to get live production value. And they wanted to film the scene where Luke wanders through the snow after escaping the Wampa Cave. And he did this by sending Mark Hamill outside into the cold while he and the camera crew stayed and filmed inside the hotel's front hall or the front doorway. So they're filming in the front doorway while Luke is out there, Mark Hamill's out there fighting the snowstorm, and the snow was so thick and they couldn't even see the street on which they were filming.
That's awesome. Great stuff. Joe Fortunato with us, Empire Strikes Back. Joe, I have a question for you. I know you have a lot of other antidotes to go with the movie, but when we're talking Empire Strikes Back, this is number 2 when we talk about the Star Wars. But did George Lucas, after 1, say we're doing 2, 3, and 4? Did he plan on it ending at 1, or was this Empire Strikes Back always in the cards that it was going to come?
You know, this is kind of an ongoing debate, and there's a lot of scholarship either way. And I don't know that we're ever going to get the definitive answer on your question, because early versions of this script did not have Darth Vader as Luke's father. Spoiler alert, I guess, out there. But so that indicates, obviously, that was not the plan to make this the story of Anakin Skywalker. It was just going to focus on Luke. Yet there are other places, interviews and stuff where it was said that before he even made the original Star Wars, there was a plan for like 9 episodes, which is eventually what happened. So it's a little hard to know if history is shaping things backwards or he had planned all this. There are the seeds of some of the stuff that came to fruition, not just in this sequel, but in the entire Star Wars saga. That he had written down in an outline prior to even making the original. But whether it was so mapped out or not, that's always a little bit of a question for debate among fans. But I want to tell a couple of more fun production stories. Yeah. We all know that, I guess we don't all, but now you know, that Frank Oz was the voice of Yoda, and he portrayed Yoda. When Mark Hamill was having trouble on those Dagobah scenes with Yoda, Frank Oz brought in Miss Piggy and Kermit the Frog to make him laugh. In fact, originally George Lucas wanted his friend Jim Henson to portray Yoda. So he declined, obviously, and he recommended his colleague and friend Frank Oz. So there was a moment in time where Yoda would have sounded like Kermit instead of Grover or one of the other Muppets. And this is kind of a known story, so maybe some people know this, but for those who don't, Harrison Ford wanted Han Solo to die at the end of this movie. He wasn't sure he wanted to play the character again, but instead of killing off the character, they had the idea of having Han frozen in the carbonite, which is, of course, a main plot point in the entire original series. So in case Ford had a change of heart and agreed to come back for Return of the Jedi, which he did, so it paid off to have him frozen in carbonite. Another sort of popular myth is that his famous line to Princess Leia when she goes, "I love you," and he says, "I know," which is such a great line, one of the greatest lines ever, that was improvised on the spot, and that's not true. Harrison Ford and Irvin Kershner had met prior to filming the scene and discussed the new dialogue. Now, they didn't tell Carrie Fisher that, and so her reaction was genuine. She was a little upset that she couldn't prepare for that, but that was not just ad-libbed on the spot. Alec Guinness wasn't sure, of course, Obi-Wan Kenobi dies in the first Star Wars, wasn't sure if he was coming back, but he finally agreed, and he came into work for just one day. He arrived at 8:30 a.m., completed his scenes by 1 p.m., and he was paid 1/4 percentage point of the movie's gross, which is worth millions of dollars. So for half a day's work, he got millions of dollars. The scene where R2-D2 is submerged in the mud pool, that was actually shot in George Lucas's unfinished swimming pool, and most of the crew were kind of hidden under the water. The famous asteroid scene that the Millennium Falcon kind of flies its way through, very tense moment in the film. There's actually a baked potato is one of the asteroids. And if you go through that frame by frame, you will find that. And the movie's most famous line, Luke, I am your father, is not even in the movie. It's very misquoted. He actually says, no, I am your father. And James Earl Jones, who of course provides the voice of Darth Vader, he's misquoted it when he repeats it for interviews, so that doesn't help. He didn't think that was true. He thought that Darth Vader was lying about being Luke's father until he read the script for Return of the Jedi. So he thought the whole thing was just a fake or a mislead. And by the way, James Earl Jones was paid $15,000 for a half a day's voiceover work. Kind of finishing up that thought process there, David Prowse, who played the physical embodiment under the suit of Darth Vader, he wasn't aware about the Luke's father bit until he saw the actual movie. And he was kind of upset with George Lucas afterwards, saying, hey, my physical acting would have been different if he had known that the line was real or the real line altogether. I've got one or two more here to share with you. But
most certainly.
Billy D. Williams, who plays Lando Calrissian, said that whenever he picked up his daughter from elementary school at the time, the children would start arguments with him because they were upset and they accused him of betraying Han Solo. So Billy D. Williams got into a lot of arguments with little kids. The director, Irvin Kershner, decided for this movie that members of the Rebel Alliance would speak with American accents, while the Imperial officers would speak with British accents, something that a lot of comedians always kind of make fun of. But the point of this was to make the story more analogous to the American Revolution. So the rebels were the Americans and the Empire were the British. We always like to sneak a little casting in here. A lot of this casting was kind of set. But the role of Lando Calrissian was offered to Yaphet Kotto, a well-known actor. He turned it down because he believed he'd be killed off and it would be difficult for him to find work after that. And of course, it went to Billy D. Williams. And just recently, George Lucas was interviewed saying that the reason that he had Yoda talk backwards in his interesting syntax was because he thought it would make kids in the audience pay more attention to what Yoda was saying. And he was delivering these little pearls of wisdom, as it were. And then just sort of wrapping up some fun facts here. This film was released on the same day as the Blues Brothers, which we're going to have to get to one of these days, in 1980. And ironically, both movies starred Carrie Fisher and Frank Oz. So co-stars in Empire Strikes Back and co-stars in the Blues Brothers.
Coast to coast there. Loved it, Joe. Way to bring it today. Empire Strikes Back, one of really the great ones when you talk about the movies, and Joe covered it for us. My friend, well done. Always appreciate the time here on WAKR. Before I let you go, anything over at your website that people can clue into?
Well, I just always encourage everybody to go over there to see the latest and greatest things I'm doing at joefortunato.net. That's joefortunato.net. Go check it out. We don't have a lot on the calendar yet, but we do have some things coming up in June. In fact, well, I'll save it for a week or so down the road, and we'll start promoting that. But it is Jaws related. I'll just hint at that. And it is local, and we have an event coming up that I think some people are going to be excited about. So you can go to joefortunato.net and check that out now, or we'll talk about it in weeks to come.
Perfect, Joe. Great job today, my friend. As always, we'll do it again next week.
I look forward to it. See you then.
Joe Fortunato, again, film study professor, went to Empire Strikes Back today, going back in time here at WAKR.